طبعا ننتقل الآن إلى كلمة كذلك لضيفة رائعة تعرفنا عليها خلف الكواليس يوسف. يشهد العالم تغيرات مستمرة، وهذا ما قد يزيد الشعور بالضغوطات المستمرة وحدة التحديات كذلك.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bit improvised, but right behind the stage is something called the green room. The green room is the prep room. You meet all sorts of people there, specifically the speakers. We get to know them on a personal level as you get to know them as well. So we are firm believers when we get to the introduction. And coming up right now, our next speaker will be delivering insights on how we can sustain a healthy and productive outlook as we collectively, of course, work towards a brighter tomorrow in a world that is in a constant state of flux.
Indeed. ويشاركنا المتحدث أو تشاركنا المتحدثة التالية رؤى مهمة حول الحفاظ على نظرة صحية ومنتجة بينما نعمل بشكل جماعي من أجل غد أكثر إشراقاً. ما بقول اسمها يوسف بس بعطي انترو عنها. متحدثة ومفكرة ومستشارة وكاتبة مشهورة، كما أنها مواطنة عالمية مخضرمة وداعية للصحة النفسية ورائدة فكرية ومدربة يوغا.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's a teaser. She is an acclaimed speaker, thinker, advisor, and writer. Also a lifelong global citizen, thought leader, and mental health advocate, and a yoga teacher, aspiring also to learn how to improv.
Improv? Interesting. السيدات والسادة، فلنرحب معا بالسيدة April Rinne.
April Rinne, ladies and gentlemen, make a round.
We're going to pull up the slides here. Good morning. I will get started in a moment as soon as my deck goes up. There we go. Okay, so we started. Perfect. There are many things I could say about change. I love change. Change is messy. Change is scary. Change is awesome. But let me make just two simple statements about change to bring us into the conversation about change, belonging, and thriving in a world in flux that I'd like to have today. First, you can't unsee change. It's really hard to imagine your world without something you just take for granted. And second, change destabilizes community and belonging. Now, an obvious, funny place to start with unseeing is a question young people often ask their elders these days. How did people ever meet without smartphones and GPS? And you remember how we did this, right? Right? Now, more difficult may be imagining a world without money, where everything didn't have a price, and where people wouldn't die if they didn't have enough money. This is a key reason that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal #1 is no poverty. But poverty and unemployment were brand new concepts back around 1700 with the advent of the first industrial revolution. Before then, everyone in your village could die from a famine, a plague, or war, but the idea that an individual or a household could go under because they didn't have money simply wasn't a thing. We've forgotten these old ways of thriving together. We can't unsee money. What's more, when big change hits, it often damages people's sense of belonging. For example, some people might think that a particular change is great and accept it willingly, even enthusiastically, while other people resist or deny the very same change. This creates new community boundaries and new dynamics of belonging or not. In this light, innovation often disrupts these dynamics, dramatically changing who has a sense of belonging and who doesn't. When everyone goes through an experience together, that sense of belonging is heightened. For example, On September 3rd, 1967, the entire country of Sweden switched from driving on the left side of the road to driving on the right side of the road. Everyone had to change. And as you might imagine, there were some harrowing experiences. Here's a photo from Stockholm on that day, right? It's kind of crazy. But doing difficult things and overcoming challenges like this together bring people closer. These two ideas, that you can't unsee change and that change can upset belonging, provide a helpful framing for what I'd like to explore together today. Take a moment to let them sink in, notice any feelings or reactions that come up, and meanwhile, let me introduce myself. I am thrilled to join you all at Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival 2022. A huge thank you to the entire festival team for inviting me and bringing this amazing gathering to life. And thank you, shukran, to all of you for the gift of your presence and attention. Now, this is a dream talk for me to give for many reasons. You all are super smart, you're full of ideas and curiosity, you're juggling new realities, and you want to do the right thing. This festival is to inspire connections, conversations, and to maximize your impact in the world. And we're spending 2 full days diving into topics ranging from happiness to health, from sport to solar-powered mobility, from generosity to community. And the common theme among all of these things is change. It's like I walked into the bullseye. And yet, change is messy. It's messy and confusing. We love it and we hate it. We tend to love changes we opt into. A new adventure, a new relationship, a new job, a new restaurant to try, right? But we really struggle with changes we don't control. The kind of change that blindsides you on a Tuesday afternoon. It goes against your expectations or it disrupts your plans. Think about your favorite team being kicked out of the World Cup. Right? A change that's easy for you might be hard for me, and vice versa. A change that feels fast to you may feel slow to me, and vice versa. We know that more change is around the corner, yet knowing this freaks us out. Right? It's messy. What's more, how organizations typically deal with change is incomplete. Change management might be great for installing new software, but it is underpowered and underscoped for the magnitude and pace of changes that we're going through today. This isn't merely about what we do about change and uncertainty. It's about how we relate to these things, full stop. It's personal and professional. It's organizational and societal. And so today, we're going to zoom out. We're going to broaden our perspectives and learn to see change differently. We're going to look back and look forward, assessing what the changes of the past few years mean for belonging, identity, and success over the next few years and beyond. You'll learn some counterintuitive insights for how to plan, lead, and innovate better, not despite, but because of even more change ahead. And I'll share tips and tools for thriving in constant change, how to embrace the flux as entrepreneurs and as human beings. Now, as we do this, please keep in mind what this means not just for you and your role or venture. Think about how this can help your colleagues, your partners, your investors, your friends, your family, everyone that you touch and collaborate with and care about. We have all had different experiences of change, and we can all use some help with change. This isn't just about startups or scaling your business. This is about your relationships, your well-being, your impact, your legacy. This is about how you show up for entrepreneurship and for life. Now, my proposed solution for how to bring calm and clarity to at least some of this messiness, and how to build the skills we need to be ready for whatever changes are ahead, is what I call a flux mindset, which is the state of mind that sees all change, good or bad, expected or unexpected, and especially the hard stuff, the stuff you didn't see coming, the stuff you just wish would go away. It sees all of it as an opportunity to learn, grow, and improve. A flux mindset is an attitude of abundance and optimism. Not naive optimism, but rather grounded in the wisdom of what is and is not, what you can and cannot control, and what really matters. Now, here's some fun context. The word flux is both a noun and a verb. As a noun, it means continuous change. As a verb, it means to learn to become fluid. So, today's world and the future are in flux, and we need to learn how to flux. I've also discovered it's an adjective, and you'll hear me talk about a bunch of things that are fluxy today. Now, and real quick, I'm going to grab some water. I don't know if I can. No. So, this quest, let's see. Apologies, hang tight, think about your fluxiness. Perfect. So this quest of how to thrive and belong in a world in flux, a world that's constantly changing, has occupied me for the better part of the past 30 years, and in a bunch of different ways. So today, as a futurist, I'm helping organizations better understand what's on the horizon and how they fit into it. In this capacity, I've been exposed to a broad range of companies, cultures, business models, and norms. And I have seen time and again that every person and every organization struggles with change in some way. Not necessarily in the same way, but there is just so much room for improvement. In addition to my futurist advisor lens, I also bring a global perspective to change. So I've worked and traveled in more than 100 countries, in high-tech capitals and urban slums, with mainstream and marginalized communities, and including across the Middle East. And these experiences have shown me firsthand the incredible depth and diversity of human wisdom when it comes to navigating the unknown. For example, in Tibet, there's the concept of the bardo, which is a liminal space where transition thrives. In Nordic countries, there's Bildung. These are retreats and education to help people contemplate change. In Japan, there's wabi-sabi, which celebrates impermanence, imperfection, and the transitory nature of all things. Now, my point here is simply that there is so much we can learn from one another if we can connect these dots. And so part of what we're going to do today is connect these dots. Now, last but not least, as a human being, I've experienced profound flux and uncertainty personally. My initiation into a world in flux happened when I was 20, and I lost both of my parents in a car crash. In an instant, my entire life flipped upside down. Everything changed. My family, my sense of self, and how I saw the future. I began to ask a very different kind of question than my peers were asking. Like, if I were to die tomorrow, what would the world, not my ego, not social media, not a boss, but the world need me to do today? Now, I never would have imagined back then that I would be sharing all of this with you today, but nor would I have imagined that I would write a book called Flux, and we'd have the last almost 3 years of total flux. And yet, I share this not as a downer, but rather as a reality check and a helpful jumping off point, because the future looks more like the last 3 years than what came before it. Now, I don't necessarily mean a pandemic, but rather this constant change and flux and not knowing. And as a result, we all have the opportunity of our lifetimes to level up and reshape our relationship to change. To shift from change is messy to change is kind of neat. So much of what I do comes down to how we see and helping people and organizations see differently. Today, I have distilled this into 4 skills for seeing change and belonging in a world in flux for us to explore together. First, your orientation towards change. Is change ahead of you? Are you going to plow right into it unless you move? Is it off to the left? Are you trying to skirt it so it doesn't touch you? Are you looking down at it like it's a hole you might fall into? Or up at it like it's a dream you want to achieve? Second, your speed relative to whatever is changing. Third, your levers for change. What do you pull on to navigate change well? And last, your openness to make change, including to change yourself. Now, these skills come from all around the world. They're not part of normal management curriculum or taught at business school. They don't require any fancy technology or even an app. They do all tie directly back to a flux mindset, and each and every one of you already has everything you need to develop these skills. Now, as we go along, if something I say makes you uncomfortable, please notice that. Pay attention to that. That's what seeing differently often feels like, and that is awesome. All right, for starters, the last couple of years have seen a tremendous number of unexpected shifts. Pause and consider, what are some of those unexpected shifts, those changing dynamics that are top of mind for you? For example, in your business, it might be a shift in how you think about and manage inventory. In your personal life, it might be a shift in how you define and measure success. For a lot of people, it's a shift from in-person to hybrid work, right? Just reflect on what some of those shifts are that you're thinking about that are top of mind. Now, consider, which of those shifts, if any, turned out better than expected? Did any of them not go the catastrophic way you'd feared, but in fact open new doors and created new possibilities? Did any of them actually improve your role or goals or team, or more broadly, your life? Here's a little secret. Over the past nearly 30 years of tracking these themes, I've seen a very clear pattern emerge. When it comes to what do I do when change and uncertainty feel overwhelming, when I just don't know what to do? Do you know what one factor matters most? It's not whether a change is big or small. It's not whether it was a surprise or you'd actually seen it coming for a while. But rather, it's whether you see a given change from a place of hope or fear. Now, I get it. Hope can be hard. For many people, myself included, when change hits, we might feel racked by anxiety or paralyzed by fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure. And when this happens, we develop tunnel vision. Literally, your field of vision narrows, your short-term memory shrinks, and you lose perspective. But while hope can be hard, hope is also a catalyst for uplift. Hope expands your vision and inspires action. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that strategy doesn't matter. What I am saying is that mindset drives strategy, not the other way around. And yet, most people and most companies get this dynamic backwards. Think about it. We spend inordinate amounts of time and money trying to develop change management strategies. Ditto for investing in uncertainty and business model disruption. But we fail to remember or even realize sometimes that every single strategy, investment, and decision you make is fundamentally rooted in your mindset. Do you see change from a place of hope or fear? That's not strategy. That's mindset. And it will absolutely color and shape and determine whatever strategy you do set. So one of my goals for today is to help build this awareness and help all of us get this dynamic right. So our first skill or superpower for today is to develop the practice of seeing change from a place of hope rather than fear and choosing hope over fear. Not always, but at least always asking yourself the question, before I make a decision or react to any particular change, where is this coming from? As I said before, am I looking down at it like it's something I might fall into, or up at it like it's something I can't wait to achieve? And what happens when you shift upwards towards hope? Next, think about the pace at which you live and work and how your speed affects what you see. Today, life is 24/7 with Insta everything and an always-on culture. We are addicted to speed and velocity. You know the effects of what it feels like to run too fast. We've all experienced them. And yet, but still, we celebrate people who run ever faster, do ever more, and never stop. And in this slide, I'd like for you to just pause and consider, what are some of the ways that you or people you know can't stop, or at least don't feel like you can stop? And where do you think this comes from? Now, to be clear, I get that parts of your role stop for no one. No one can stop the end of the month from coming and payroll from needing to be made. No one can stop markets from opening or investors from expecting healthy returns. But I'm talking about pace and speed at a different, deeper level. Peel back a layer. Why are we running so fast? Striving to be your best self is one thing, but this pace is something else entirely. It's burning us out, burning a hole through our wallets and calendars, and burning up the planet. And that's not all. Running fast is also a signal of fear. This is a fascinating part of my research. It turns out that when we're constantly running fast, our brain begins to believe that everything is a tiger chasing it. It's a vicious dynamic. When we fear, we run faster. And as we run faster, that fear chases us. And yet, any organism or any system that lives like this ultimately collapses, which is where we're heading, you could say, as humanity, if our current pace keeps up, right? And this isn't only about burnout. Think about this in terms of leadership, innovation, inclusion. Consider, when do you have new ideas? When do you notice new things? When do you make your best decisions? When do you feel most alive? And when are you able to really show up for others, to create a sense of belonging for others too? Now, for all of these questions, I will wager that your answer is not when you're running fast. When we're constantly running fast, we actually miss much of life. We fail to see what really matters, we struggle to manage risk, and we bypass opportunities for hope and belonging. So our second superpower for today is to learn how to run slower. Now, I do not mean stop or be lazy or give up. I mean learning how to live at a pace that is sustainable for all time and that allows you to see and get clarity on what really matters and what's really happening, right? Now, some cultures get this superpower better than others. For example, in the Netherlands, there is the culturally accepted and celebrated concept of niksen, which literally means do nothing. And they mean it. Now, niksen is not laziness. The Dutch are among the most productive societies on the planet. But rather, this is a reframing of rest and a collective society-wide appreciation of the kind of growth that can come only with rest. Now, let's shift to our third superpower for today, which is one of my favorites. I call this your levers for change. What do you pull on to navigate change well? In my book, I call this the Flux superpower, because when it comes to navigating change and creating a sense of belonging well over time, no one thing matters more. I'm curious if anyone has already guessed what this is. It's trust. Trust has never been more important, more valuable, or more fraught than today. And yet, a lot of what we've been taught about trust isn't very helpful for today's world or a future in flux. So, today, I hope we're going to fix that a bit. Zooming out, trust is the glue that holds people, organizations, and cultures together. It's the connective tissue that fosters respect, loyalty, shared purpose, and a willingness to go the extra mile. Trust is both cognitive and emotional. On the one hand, cognitive trust means trusting that people are reliable and dependable, that they'll do what they say they will. On the other hand, emotional trust means trusting that people care about and will look out for one another. I find it's helpful to think of cognitive trust as a kind of operational trust, and emotional trust is all about character and culture. Cognitive trust is brain, emotional trust is heart. Now, to get our bearings on this theme, I'd like to just take a moment and have you reflect on your relationship to trust. Consider, who do you trust? What do you trust? How does trust work in your world? What are your mechanisms for understanding trust? Do you believe that the average person can be trusted? Why or why not? What influences your response? Do you trust yourself? How does it feel when others don't trust you? Who do you turn to when change really hits? Now, I'll wager you turn to your trusted relationships. I'll also wager that anyone who doesn't have these has a much harder time and tends to trust others much less than people who do. And last but not least, how did the last couple years change your trusted relationships and your sense of belonging? Because here's the hook. Trust is what holds people together during times of great change and uncertainty. And it's what helps us forge a path forward together, too. Lasting, genuine belonging fundamentally hinges on trust. But notice that across society, we have designed systems, organizations, entire sectors from the basic assumption of mistrust, that the average individual cannot and should not be trusted. Our default setting is mistrust, that I should not trust you, and right now, you all should not be trusting me. And yet, what have we just done? We've just cut ourselves off from one another right when we could help each other most. Now, the consequences of this are enormous. It's why we're stuck globally in a trust crisis, with all-time low levels of trust in business, government, media, academia, technology. And it's not an overstatement to say that our future depends on course correcting and getting this right. Instead, imagine what could happen if we broke this default setting and reset it to the average individual is trustworthy. Now, I do not mean everyone or blind trust or naive trust. I mean the average individual. When we do this, we begin to design an entirely different reality, which can be transformative, especially when change hits. For example, the US technology and streaming company Netflix, if you've heard of Netflix. For example, Netflix's HR policy, the entire policy is 5 words long. Act in Netflix's best interest. This is the whole policy. They don't have a book with rules and regulations. That's it. This is HR policy and organizational culture designed from a basis of trust. More broadly, opportunities to start with trust are endless. For example, exclusion is a fast track to mistrust and a complete lack of belonging. Repairing trust takes time, often far longer and often costs far more than if you'd simply started and acted through a lens of trust instead. Now, I realize that some of what I'm saying here probably goes against how you were taught or sounds a bit idealistic. Now, I'm actually a realist, and I totally get that not everyone wants to reestablish trust. There are a lot of people actively undermining trust today, but still, trust is the way forward. It is belonging. We throw away so much when we treat mistrust as the rule rather than the exception. And I ask you to consider how much you could gain and how much we all could belong by starting with trust. So, how you see change, your speed of change, and your levers for change are all skills that help boost your fluxiness and prepare you for what's ahead. They also bring us to our fourth and final superpower for today, your openness to make change, including to let go, to be changed, and to see completely anew. Now again, this can be hard for humans. On the whole, we crave certainty and consistency. We want to know what's going to happen. We need to know. And big problem, we mistakenly believe that the world is somehow predictable, controllable, under our domain. One of the things that A World in Flux teaches us is that as much as we'd like to believe we can control what happens, what we're really chasing is merely an illusion of control. As much as we'd like to believe we can find certainty if we just look hard enough, what we're really confronting is our own inability to let go, our own fear of not knowing. Now, again, I am not saying that you should let go of your goals or shirk your responsibilities. I'm talking again about a deeper kind of letting go, a getting out of your own way. You can think of this as the risk of complacency, when sticking with what's familiar is actually more dangerous, when not changing or not letting go actually creates greater risks. So let me briefly share a practical example to illustrate what I mean, and then we'll wrap up. Please raise your hand if you were taught that your career looks like a ladder to climb with success at the top. Me too. That's good. Feel free. Yep. Please raise your hand if you're kind of frustrated with career options and career flexibility today. Okay, good. And please raise your hand if you're concerned about possible layoffs on the horizon. Okay, listen up. This is for all of you. So, career ladders are a result of the first industrial revolution, which brought us factories and steam engines more than 200 years ago. But today we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Don't you think it's time for an update? But this requires letting go of outdated models and assumptions, including outdated notions and concepts of one's career. Let me suggest that the career shape of the future does not look like a ladder to climb, but rather it looks like a portfolio to curate. And the future of work is the era of portfolio careers. For example, an artist's portfolio contains the work she's proudest of, the canvas of her life. Investors design portfolios to maximize returns and mitigate risk. Executives use what's called portfolio theory to craft strategies that balance the future with the present. So there's a lot to like about portfolios. Your portfolio is your unique combination of everything you can do that contributes to society. It is so much more than your resume. It recognizes that your resume actually only reflects a teeny tiny fraction of who you are and what you can do, right? For example, a traditional resume wouldn't include parenting skills or skills you learned when you were sick or resume gaps in which great growth happened. Your portfolio does. It highlights all of these additional super skills and more fully reflects your full identity. What's more, when a company helps its talent develop their portfolios, you identify skills that had been hidden before, and you create new avenues for leadership, internal mobility, and belonging. What's more, your portfolio is yours forever. Unlike a job, it can never be taken away from you. And what's more, you already have a portfolio even if you didn't realize it. And there's never been a better time to start curating it than now. And for all of the things that we can't control in today's world, ownership of your portfolio is one that you can. So, coming full circle, a world in flux opens up a new world of opportunity for how each of you lives, works, learns, leads, thrives, and belongs. Opening a flux mindset, running slower, starting with trust and letting go are not only how to embrace all change, but also how to be a leader and driver of positive change at your organization, with yourself and others, in life, and wherever you belong. And remember, when everything is in flux, everything can benefit from a flux mindset. And with that, thank you very much.